Hi, and welcome to today's video, which is a mix between a Q&A and me simply talking a bit about a few related subjects that are things that I normally would talk about, but as they were asked in a comment, and I haven't been receiving a lot of comments beyond that lately that have been warranting their own Q&A video. So for the moment we will see what that will be for June, since the live streams that I've been doing lately act as a Q&A in a way too, though it's live instead of pre-recorded. But I like the idea behind the Q&A video. So for those of you watching, if there is something that I'm talking about here or that we've been talking about in the live streams that I'm either forgetting to make a separate video about, or that I have promised or expressed interest in making a separate video about, or other subjects and questions from the streams that you find interesting that you would like to hear more about, I'm more than happy to make those subjects into things that I cover in the next Q&A videos. So please let me know in the comments of this video, and I will do my best to compile a list for June and July and have those videos recorded and posted by the end of the month, as I usually try to do lately. And the subject of this video is a combination of spirituality and the occult versus or combined with paganism. They don't have to be exclusive to another, especially if you keep an open mind about their uses and implementations rather than following strict regiment, or if you happen to be a part of a certain order or path, or whatever you wish to call it. Also, a inspiration from my spiritual path and some descriptions of rituals that I perform and my thoughts on them. And then later today I'm going to make a second part of this video on symbology and metaphors. I've tried to think about this subject for a while, which is why I'm shooting this at the last day of the month. Not just because I've been busy with work, but it's a important subject for me, and I feel that it warrants a thoughtful answer. And then it's also a subject that keeps evolving as I am as well. And I think that's an important aspect of something like this, is that it's something that grows with you over the course of your life, and you find what practices works best for you and your circumstances, and your goals and so on. And as I was sitting here reflecting and preparing for this video, I have an incense burner to my right, which is making some interesting and pretty patterns in the air. And as I was moving my sight to the left, I was seeing dandelion seeds or tufts dancing throughout the air next to one of my hedges, which is of lilacs, that 2 weeks ago when I was here last time they were just capsules of seeds, and now they have evolved or blossomed into a really wonderful shade of purple. Some more violet than purple. And if I would take a picture of 2 of the different flowers, or they are more of a cone, so a collection of flowers. I can't find a proper word for what it's called at the moment, but the intensity of the color is a bit different on some of the different bushes that I have. So some would be more purple and some would be more violet, and which is what I couldn't say for certain. The only thing that I'm sure of is that I adore and appreciate them both. It's a pretty nice way to start a video like this, I think, which is why I started the recording instead of continuing my contemplation, to have it a bit like a stream of consciousness, which I think is a useful approach to having rituals and meditations, because in some practices of meditation it's about the drought and deadening of that stream, while I think one thing that meditation does for me is that it opens up different streams and closing off others, and creates a kind of focus that aids contemplation and reflection, rather than if your stream of consciousness, or rather your consciousness itself, is too widespread. You may get distracted, and just like in other parts of life, it can be hard to focus, and many thoughts are connected to others, just like memories, for example. And as you probably know and have experienced, many of those thoughts and memories are connected to emotions that trigger certain moods and thought patterns. and that can in turn be destructive or distracting to the different steps that you take in a meditation, depending on what your goal is, that is. And I think that's why I like to incorporate kind of movement to many of my meditations rather than sitting or laying down. One of the stereotypical images of meditation is someone sitting down in a lotus position. And I think that can have its use and purpose. But you often need to enter that situation with a greater focus. It's a larger threshold to overcome if you're just initiate. But both of these strategies or implementations of meditation are still a form of meditation, I think. And one important aspect of it, I think, is to not give up or give in to boredom or to be distracted or feel hindered of the distraction, because if you're not used to meditation, you may often feel in the beginning distracted as your mind wanders, which is a natural part of learning the process of, like I mentioned earlier, how to find a path or a stream of thought and either submit to it or focus on it, depending on what way you choose to view it. And I think that's why, or what I want to connect this certain or specific video or talk about it to when I'm out on a walk by myself. Because to me, having the walk creates a focus that in many cases can remove other distractions that you might feel if you're stuck in one position. Because it opens up to other distractions for sure. But as you are out in the elements, you also become not limited, but open to the part or area that you are immersing yourself in. And if you're able to find a place that you feel safe and calm, to have your walk combined with a meditation. I found that can be very useful and valuable, because that surrounding will add a depth to the thoughts that you are able to focus on during that meditation, and hopefully it will deepen some awareness that you have about something and give you some clarity for the things that you are thinking about and working on to achieve. And that's one of the things in mysticism that is often one of the first layers that you get to uncover when you study mysticism. Is that, like many other things, there is symbology and vocabulary connected to different traditions and fields of study that is unique to its path or subject. And the more that you learn and know about something, the easier it becomes to learn other things. It's like every chapter in a book being also a study or tutorial that prepares you for the next. And it's not something that you can just skip to the middle or end of a book without having read the previous chapters, because they give you tools that enable you to immerse yourself or experience what the next part is sharing. And of course you could just read any segment and interpret it as it is, but it lacks the context then. And then in turn you can perhaps put that sentence into another context and make it into something else, and it may do something for you, but it will have lost its initial lesson, or it's a bit hard to explain it in this abstract way. But that's one of the wonderful aspects of mysticism, that a lot of it is hidden, and it's kind of an adventure to run into the night. But of course you can also walk or crawl through it. And over the years, many of my inspirations for the paths that I've taken have evolved. And I started getting a bit more into the occult in my 20s, because during those years there were several things that aided me and enabled me to reach different parts, elements, or depth of this study, practice, or tradition that I lacked access to previously, which you can connect to the yearly spread and adoption of the internet or the World Wide Web, where it makes it easier to find different publishers of literature, and also of course different homepages and forums and authors, and the discussions about subjects, and also of course individuals and artists over the world that are on a similar path or different paths that they share through either novels or books or interviews or lyrics, to mention some examples. And then in turn, through traveling and interacting with different artists or other individuals and having discussions with them, or simply attending discussions between other people, and being in my position over the years, I've had the privilege to be a part of some experiences, or being in locations where I've been able to listen to or talk to some very interesting people that have not just interesting experiences, but in turn also interesting thoughts and ways of thinking, and also their own study or practices. Be it ceremonial or not. And with time I hope to be able to introduce some of those individuals on this platform and have discussions and conversations with them, because I think they have a lot of very deep and interesting knowledge and wisdom to share. So I think the benefit of such conversations will be on a multitude of levels, because it will not just benefit them but also those of you watching and me as well. I think as for a balance of or between destructive or constructive aspects of a ritual, or living a kind of a lifestyle that implements rituals or meditation. I think having a walk is one constructive way to implement that practice into your habits. And then, of course, as I've discussed a bit on some live streams and also in my videos about depression and about cutting, then there is, of course, some other aspects of rituals that can be destructive, and they shouldn't be destructive for the sake of being destructive. I think it's important to evaluate different merits of your behavior and your that goes along to or with your thoughts as well. That I think it's more useful, if possible, to see what extends between those. Because the more things that you think or that you do that can turn something destructive into constructive, or at least convert things into something useful, even though it might hurt in the moment, it will benefit you long term. I think, for example, that's in my case, that often comes into play when I'm working on paintings, because to me that's a ritual that is very connected to that you are setting aside, in many cases, a long amount of time that can be not just hours, but it can require days of your attention to properly act and reflect upon your decisions in real time, which makes it a very immersive experience, but also a very mentally, physically taxing and draining one. And to me that is also why I can't perform this kind of a ritual casually, because I have my my practice that implements different steps, and each of these steps have their own requirements, and is to me an important aspect and part of the ritual or ceremony. And I think this can be connected to composing or performing music as well. But I think you, or some of you, can relate to that. It's easier to do this as a casual approach, But if you enter into the practice of composing from a more ritualistic angle, perspective and practice, it becomes greatly enhanced, because it's something that you have already enhanced with intent through reflection and contemplation of the thing that you are about to practice. And if you can connect that practice to other meditations or rituals, I think they will enhance the energy of each other and add to it. And the more you work on your chain of these elements in practice, I think the greater the effect of what they enhance is. And I have myself experienced vast, enormous increase of both quality and intensity in the work that I'm able to manifest through this practice. As I'm also always keep learning and improving the instruments that I use for the manifestations and composition. Having this practice adds a lot to creating something as powerful as possible. And in turn, to experience that kind of power is also empowering. And that is definitely a constructive aspect and part of all of this, is that if you enter into the practice with the thought or perception that what you're doing is wasting time instead of investing time, you're already submitting to a loss, and that will subtract from your experience and its results and potency, which I think is very important to take a note of. Because practice, purpose and intent are all connected and important. And even though I had a different idea in the beginning or on my own, when I was thinking about these subjects, when one of the sentences were asking to describe a ritual in detail, I think I accidentally did that right now, and also earlier in this video. But of course, I would be more than happy to make a second part of this kind of video or these subjects to go a bit more in depth about that. So right now, I think this feels like I've said what I can say for the moment, and I feel like there has been a good flow between thought and information. And even though I haven't been clear or even gone into any depths about these connections to, for example, paganism, I think that's another aspect that deserves a bit more focus and also contemplation, because there is definitely a big and deep connection between all of these things and paganism, especially when it comes to symbology and metaphors. So I think I will take some time tonight while I finally have the time to paint and reflect on the connection between these subjects, and then I will record that other video, either while some of the paintings are drying between layers, or perhaps as I return from the forest from recording another guitar video, or at least attempting to, and rendering or editing that material into another video. I will know more about that tomorrow or the day that follows it. With that, I thank you for watching and giving me such interesting, wonderful questions and thoughts that I can reflect and expand upon. And I look forward to see thoughts and requests in the comments in this video on what I can talk about further in future videos. And as always, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.